Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day.
Cheers everyone, I'm your dystopian innkeeper. Anson will be the last fallback champion to make it into Idle Champions. There's no spotlight yet, and Wintershield goes live in about 5 days at the time of the recording. So it feels like a good time to dive deep into Anson's lore. And people often say Anson sees things early. What they don't mention is that he sometimes speaks too soon. There's a particular silence that follows when he points out a problem no one else has noticed yet. A silence that feels less like gratitude and more like the room quietly wishing he had waited. That tension clings to him even when he's right, especially when he's right. He's not the kind of person who enters a space with presence. If anything, he seems like someone who has learned to take up as little room as possible. Not out of shyness, but out of habit. The habit of someone who grew up in a place where attention was a resource and wasting it was considered rude. Anson's home was small, unremarkable, and perpetually on the edge of something. Not disaster, not prosperity, just a slow, grinding uncertainty that makes every decision feel heavier than it should. The dangers there weren't dramatic, they were cumulative. A bad harvest, a broken tool, a promise made too quickly. Nothing that would ever make it into a bard song, but everything that could quietly ruin a family. In such a place, you learn to watch. Not because you're gifted, but because the cost of not watching is immediate. Anson learned to track the small shifts. A neighbor who stopped talking as much, a merchant who changed their route, a storm that arrived half a day earlier than expected. He didn't think of it as a skill, it was simply how he survived. But there's a side effect to that kind of vigilance. You start seeing patterns everywhere. Even when you wish you didn't. You start anticipating outcomes before anyone else has even realized there's a choice to be made. And you start carrying the weight of those outcomes long before they happen. That weight shaped him more than the place itself. Leaving was not a dramatic moment. No argument, no tragedy, no revelation. Just a slow accumulation of all the small truths. He realized he wasn't solving problems anymore. He was delaying them. Holding things together long enough for the collapse to look at least orderly. And the more he tried to help, the more he felt like he was becoming part of the machinery that kept the place stuck. So he left, quietly, predictably, almost mathematically. On the road, he didn't reinvent himself. He didn't seek adventure. He took work that required reliability, not charisma. He listened more than he spoke. He avoided people who believed too strongly in destiny. He trusted patterns, not promises. And then he met the Fallbacks. The Fallbacks, let's be honest, they are not the first choice for anything. They're the group you call when your original plan fails, when the obvious heroes are unavailable, uninterested, or already dead. They operate in the aftermath of better ideas. What makes them compelling is not their competence, although they have plenty of it, but their honesty. They don't pretend to be saviors, they don't chase glory. They solve problems because someone has to, and because they're willing to accept that the solutions won't always be clean. They're improvisers, specialists, pragmatists. People who understand that success often means choosing the least damaging option. People who know that sometimes the best outcome is simply preventing things from getting worse. Anson recognized that immediately, and it felt familiar. I need a sip of coffee. All that talking. Well, the moment Anson became part of the Fallbacks wasn't marked by heroism. It was marked by a miscalculation. Not his, but theirs. A caravan escort job that should have been simple turned complicated fast. The bandits were better organized than expected. The terrain offered fewer advantages than the Fallbacks had assumed. Panic spread through the caravan workers. Arguments broke out among the Fallbacks themselves. Anson didn't take charge. He didn't shout instructions. He simply pointed out a constraint no one else had accounted for. A detail about timing, terrain, and the bandits' formation. It wasn't brilliant. It was just a missing piece that made the rest of the plan coherent. The solution that followed wasn't elegant either, but it worked. More importantly, it avoided the cost others had been willing to pay too easily. Afterward, no one asked him to join. They just started talking to him as if he already had. Within the Fallbacks, Anson occupies a strange space. He's not the leader, but his assessments often shape decisions. He doesn't command, but his silence can stop a plan mid-stride. He sees patterns forming before others feel their weight, and that makes him both valuable and unsettling. He doesn't believe in clean victories. He believes in survivable outcomes. And that distinction matters, because it forces choices no one wants to own. Someone has to decide when to retreat. Someone has to say that a partial success is still better than a glorious failure. Totally relatable. Anson often becomes that someone. Not because he wants to, but because he sees the alternatives too clearly to pretend otherwise. But clarity is not the same as certainty. Anson's perception is sharp, but not infallible. He reads situations well, but people are not situations. Motives are not patterns, and sometimes his caution becomes hesitation even. There are moments when decisions are made while he is still calculating the cost. Moments when instinct or conviction pushes the Fallbacks forward while he holds back, convinced the risk is too high. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. The difference is rarely obvious in the moment. What isolates him is not being wrong, it's knowing he might be. He carries responsibility like a reflex, even when no one asks him to. When a plan fails after he warned against it, he feels the weight of having seen it and not stopped it. When a plan succeeds by ignoring his caution, he wonders whether his entire worldview, built on restraint and risk management, is narrower than he wants to admit. He doesn't talk about this. He just adjusts quietly, as if recalibrating himself. And despite the discomfort, despite all the uncertainty, Anson stays with the Fallbacks. Not because he believes in destiny or heroism, but because he recognizes something rare. A group that understands its own limitations. The Fallbacks don't pretend to be more than they are. They don't hide their doubts. They don't chase illusions of perfection. Another sip of coffee. They operate in the cracks of the world. The very same cracks Anson has lived in his entire life. He stays because leaving again would mean abandoning not a collapsing settlement, but a group that functions precisely because it acknowledges the cost of every choice. So Anson is not the hero who changes the world. He's the one who prevents it from unraveling a little faster than it otherwise would. His strength is not dramatic and his flaws are not theatrical. He's compelling because he embodies a kind of heroism that rarely gets celebrated. The quiet, persistence effort to keep things from getting worse. But if you asked him whether that's enough, he wouldn't answer. Not because he's evasive, but because he generally does not know. Maybe this is the only way he knows how to exist in this world. Maybe this is the only place where his way of seeing things isn't a burden. Or maybe this thought lingers longer than he likes. He stays because he has no idea what he would become if he stopped watching for the next small thing that might go wrong. Last sip of coffee. Cheers. Well, I'll see you in about 5 days when Wintershield and Anson go live, including reworked Binwin. And in the meantime, as always, everyone, have fun. And I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.
Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey. It's a brand new day.